Hello and welcome to the NEWSPASTE Podcast with me, your host, Johnny Vedmore. And we're here again for a really good conversation. I'm looking forward to this one. This is a guy who's really, for the first moment I met him, it was like, and I really mean this. I very rarely meet someone for the first time, and they're so nice that it remains in my memory for weeks afterwards, like reverberating, like an earthquake of niceness coming out and making me want to be better to other people too. And Ash Mahmood is the man who had that effect on me, and I really mean it. You actually changed part of how I interact with people to an extent. Just meeting you, I know you. That sounds like that made to you sound like I'm blowing some sort of smoke up your rear end or whatnot, but it was really true. I remember spending a couple of days afterwards in the restaurant where I was writing up by a little cafe. I was writing up the shows every day, thinking really heavily about how I treat people, how I talk to people, what niceness is. I actually created kind of philosophy of people from it, and I'll explain that in a little bit. It was it got down to like minus one zeros and ones, but it's even gone further than that. You know, it's extremely interesting when you meet someone who has that much of an effect on you. So, Ash, how are you today? Thank you for coming on the NEWSPASTE Podcast. Really nice to see you.
Hello, Johnny. First of all, thank you very much for having me on your show. I'm very grateful for your very kind words there. That obviously means a huge amount because I, hold you in very high esteem and honor. Very honored to be on your show again. So thank you very much. It's likewise, you've had a huge effect on me as well, with your gentle but courageous nature and giving me time and space to speak with you. So that's been great. So thank you for having me back.
You're doing it again. You are a habitual charmer of the nicest kind. I completely and utterly I adore it. I adore it. I started to work out after we met that there's certain people in the world that most people are just switched off. Most people run on like I can't remember the full sort of like, I've adopted it into my philosophy to an extent when I meet people, is that you meet someone who gives you back, flicks up zeros. They're not interested. They got their heads down and not looking. You meet people who are actually can be repulsive and horrible to people and push people away because society and life is so difficult.
Yes.
You got people who are just completely awful. I see those as minus ones, minus twos on the scale of humanity that I built around meeting you. Ones, people who flick up ones are basically there to interact, make you happy, make you smile, are your friend. You have ups and downs, but you have proper conversations. I'm walking along a road and I see someone walking towards me. If they look in my eye and say hello, that's the one there. That's someone communicating. But then you meet these rare people like yourself, Ash, which I ended up labeling as a 2, maybe even a 3, where not only are they friendly, but they actually have an effect on how you interact with other people, because it's more than just flicking up ones. You're constantly, your nature is one of being kind, respectful, honest, and I really respect. I mean, I love it. I love it. I embrace it. So, did you just have very good parents? What was it? What made you grow up to be a very nice person to people?
That's a very difficult question to answer. I think that there's a lot of. I think it's a blessing, I suppose. Your words are, I'm resonating with you, obviously, and you're feeling something from me, but that's also you're accepting of that. I don't know if everyone would share your loveliest words. Actually, I don't think I've heard such kind words spoken about me. So that really was wonderful. I think, yeah, just very blessed. I'm blessed that you feel something from me. So there's something beautiful about you that you're resonating with me. And for me, I think the rest is just a blessing. Honestly, I can't explain it, because sometimes I look back on some of the difficulties and challenges that I faced in my life, and that could easily have made me bitter. But I sort of come back for more and keep trying in the same way. It could have potentially changed me and made me a bit more aggressive. But and don't get me wrong, I have my moments of anger as well. So the temperature rises and the blood starts to heat up a bit. We all go through that. Anger's part of life. But just very blessed. I think that there's more to everything that's happened. I don't want to take honestly any credit for it, because I think that I've been blessed from the universe. The external and the internal universe combined together has helped me to be where I am. Because I was talking with my brother about this. We have deep conversations every Saturday. We meet up for a bit of tennis, and then we also talk philosophy. And he was saying to me, yeah, what was the, how did you become, to be honest, he's another one that does praise me. How did you become this person he thinks without, any ego? And I don't recognize that. I still think I must have some ego. And I said, I can't explain it. I'm just very blessed that during the COVID times, I saw through it. And I started to have experiences that I couldn't explain. I was doing things that I couldn't explain. It was like miracles were happening. I was seeing things, even just seeing things ahead. I was getting a broader pictures as I was engaging with nature, with animals, with plants. Just things were just happening. We call it, David Icke sometimes says, like information download. So I guess it was some kind of extremely important and powerful information downloads that just gave me a better vision and has sort of protected me and made me a lot more fearless. I don't fear death at all. I don't fear very much, to be honest. So I just have to say that I'm blessed, and it's something to do with the universe and God, whatever you want to call it. And we're all part of that oneness. Although we're having differing experiences, we're all part of that oneness. So I'm just grateful. I have to be grateful for whatever's happened. It's almost, as I said, it's beyond me. Something out there is helping me through people, through so many other experiences, and it's just making it very joyful and very enjoyable, even though we're going through some very challenging times.
I get a feeling.
Really
I get a feeling your brother nailed what one of the things I'm trying to get at here, and it's something that I have similar experience in. Though I mean, it's always I think it's a perpetual journey of developing and understanding your own ego, and being able to control your own ego is a very much a work in progress always. Otherwise you have an ego. So yeah, a big ego, overinflated. As soon as you don't think you need to work on your ego at the moment, that's the exact moment you need to work on your ego. And I get told quite a lot the same thing. I get told, "Oh, you seem like you don't have an ego," because I'm so accepting that other people can do it. I find people completely fantastic. Like they do. Like I meet so many people who do such amazing things, and I've always feel humbled by meeting other people. I think it's the ability to feel humble, which is the part of the control of the ego. And that's something that you do very well. You do very well. You say and I agree. I can say myself that I have the same experience that people say it to me, but I wrestle with the fact that of my ego all of the time, and what I think about myself and how I treat other people, how I think of other people. Were you like this when you were a kid as well? Were you a bit humble when you were a kid, or is it something that happened later on?
I think it's something that probably happened later on. I think especially 2020, I think really. So quite late, really. Although, I guess if I spoke to friends from the past, I don't think that hopefully they wouldn't have any, they'd probably still think, yeah, pretty humble person. But I personally think that the development has gone into some kind of overdrive, to be honest, in the last 5 years. There was always aspects of me before as well that was there. But I think when I was young, when you were a child or when you're a teenager and when you're a young adult, you're very confused. So you didn't know how to handle the emotions. You knew something was wrong, or you felt something from what someone was saying, but no one was understanding you. And so you were not able to express yourself very well, and that sometimes caused frustration. And I definitely, when I was young, I lost my temper quite a lot. I did some crazy stuff. So almost like you're trying to you want some help. You're calling out for help. When I was young, I'd probably be calling out for help. You didn't always get it by your actions. But I think it was always there. There were always signs. I sometimes think, wow, I listened to that song in 1986. I don't know. Now I understand why I listened to that song, and everything that happened in your life before some kind of a major awakening. They're all clues of what was to come, I think. And it's like, okay, now I could kind of connect all of those things. So no, I don't think when I was young I was what I am now. Sometimes I look back with embarrassment and think, I don't recognize who that person was, almost like it was a totally different person. And it's painful to look back sometimes and try. I mean, you want to look back as well. A part of you wants to look back because you want to learn and you want to move forward. But then you also want to live in the moment and not wrestle with the past, but just try to live in the moment and not worry about the future as well. It's a constant tussle, because looking back at the past, it's very painful. You feel quite embarrassed that was you, or you feel sometimes disappointed in what you did. You even sometimes take the blame for things that happened in the past, whereas before I would have blamed other people. But now I try not to look at anyone else and just try to look at myself, really, rather than looking at anyone else, because I can't change what other people are going to do. That's their own responsibility. What I try and do is just focus on myself. But like you said, I'm the same. Still inside of me, there's a lot of thoughts, and some of the thoughts are not good. And we get consumed because we're getting heterosuggestions from the propaganda machine all around us, through people, through media, through social media, through all our interactions, through what they're building around us that's giving us this impression. And sometimes it's quite a negative feeling when you can see it. You think they're building bars everywhere, and they're putting cameras everywhere, and they're restricting your movement, so you can't get out of a place. You're in a station, and you're on a platform, and there's only one way out of the platform unless you want to climb over some bars. And so everything's like you're really being forced and programmed to just, enter and exit and walk down one path, which was not the case, even just a couple of years ago to such an extent. So all of these things can be quite consuming, and they can make you feel quite negative. Like I've been saying a lot of negative stuff about living in London now. And yes, you can argue that could be true, but is it good to focus on that? Shouldn't we still focus on the positive things? Because in every situation, even in London, there are positive things. You meet positive people. If we could just keep reminding ourselves every time we have a negative thought, of which I have so many, that there are positives in every situation. Like you said, you meet these lovely people, and I'm not surprised, of course. My neighbor they know at the moment I'm on my own for a while, so they give me some food, or a friend of mine drops me off. And she picks me up in the morning to go to work, because she knows I've sold my car and I had a bad leg, tore some muscles. So she's been giving me a lift, even though I've recovered. I said, I can walk now, no problem, don't worry, it's a great walk. But she still offers me a lift. And if you focus on all of these things, and these are not people that we don't agree with anything about the COVID narrative, they don't want to go there. And I understand why. I'm trying to put myself in their perspective. I might not have been able to do that very easily in the past. But she's very afraid of thinking that why would they do that? Why would they geoengineer the climate? I can't believe that there's any, she just doesn't want to go there, that it's all up to control and harm us. She kind of hinted that that's what it might be, but she doesn't want to go there.
The precipice of the rabbit hole, though, isn't it? It's the people who are there was an interesting comment on X today. Someone had posted to someone else. They were having a conversation about Elon Musk. And I've got an article which I released just before the election, which is about how Musk went through Jeffrey Epstein training course. And that course was headed by the father of the nudge units, the psychological nudge units. And it was on how to manipulate people using social media. And it was only the heads of these social media giants who went on the course. Everybody from Jeff Bezos and Sergey Brin would go on such courses and the like. And they're having an argument about Elon Musk, and someone came in and said, Oh, well, maybe you want to read this article, which has got a load of information about Elon Musk and is a real, really exposes him. And in return, the guy said, I try and avoid rabbit holes. And it's like, well, you can't have a discussion then, because you're just, the discussion is the moment where you accept that you're not going to stand on the edge of the rabbit hole looking in anymore.
Yeah.
It's the moment where you indulge in rabbit hole jumping.
Yes.
It's a dangerous direction to go in. And I tried to explain there's no rabbit holes here. There's only an ostrich with his head in the sand if you want it. There's many ways to describe it to people, but really the fact is that some people, especially in Britain, I think you probably would have experienced this yourself as well. They don't want to push against the official narrative because it would mean they would have to accept that there's a rabbit hole right in front of them.
Yes.
And there is.
Yes, exactly.
You mentioned London there. London's I found it very hard place. When I was young, London is on the TV all the time in the UK, of course. Grow up, the news comes from London, the information comes from London, the politics is all done in London. London's this big city. Every show you watch, movies based in London, you get used to seeing this. And it was always, for me, sometimes we would drive through London when we were coming back, because I was in the Sealed Knot, I was in the 17th Century Reenactment Society. We'd always be traveling around every weekend. And often we'd we'd go via the M25 if we were on that side of London. And then we'd kind of sometimes my dad would go in and we'd just drive through. And it would be like, oh, wow, look at all these palaces and big roads, all of this. But it wasn't until I was in my 20s that I actually went to London. And then I found it I didn't like it straight away. I come from a very cheery place, Wales, South Wales, everybody's very happy. But London, straight away, it felt very dark. And it felt very like there was a lack of energy, almost like there's an energy bulb that's been switched off by building concrete upon concrete upon concrete, and it's like the output of civilization. Have you always grown up in London, and what's been your view of London as you progress through your life?
Yes, I think part of it must be I must be indoctrinated into London, because I was born here and I've lived here most of my life. So there's always, sometimes even with bad things, there's always a tinge of sadness when something comes to an end, because you lived that life for so long. And I suppose sometimes I don't know if it's because I've changed so much, so I see everything so differently, or was London always this harsh? I mean, you're giving a very interesting perspective from a long time ago when you came here.
I'll give you, after you
tell me.
young,
I mean, of course.
After you tell me what you think, I'll tell you another thing that from about 2006 that changed my opinion of London for a while as well. But go on, please.
Yes, I mean, it shaped a lot of the experiences here have shaped me, shaped who I am, because of the people you meet, the experiences you've had, going to college, university, school, clubbing, whatever, all sorts of stuff, meeting interesting characters, working here as well in various environments. And then I did actually live in Pakistan, which is the complete opposite of most people are coming to England from Pakistan. My dad decided to go against the norms and said, let's actually move to Pakistan and go the other way and see what life's like over there. And again, it was such a shock. But after a while, like anything, when you start to get used to it, I suddenly realized I was blessed with these beautiful mountains and a bike. And I thought, I'm just going to ride my bicycle. And I graduated to a motorbike. You could ride a motorbike. When you're very young. So I was 15, I had a nice 350 Honda XL motorbike. So I was able to explore, and I had the time of my life. So it's all about, it's more about yourself and what comes into your path that can make the experience so good. So I really enjoyed my time in the mountains up in the northern areas of Pakistan. And it was completely different to what I'd ever been told. And even spending time with my family in Pakistan, it was so different. When I was with them, everything was very closed. They were very protective of me, not to go out and explore things. And I always wanted to go out and explore as the first instinct that I always had. I just wanted to get out and go somewhere, no matter what, and find a way. So that was a great experience. I spent some time, then you get a nice perspective of, maybe London's not as what you always thought it to be. And I remember coming back here and I thought I had all these friends, I was going to catch up with them. And they were all leading different lives, or they were too busy. And one of them, I remember I met him, and I thought he was one of my best friends. And he just said a couple of words. He didn't hug or anything. I was trying to go for a hug, and he just did a fist bump. And then he saw the bus and he said, I've got to go. And he jumped on the bus, and I thought, that kind of summed up my return. It was like nothing was meaningful anymore. The things I thought were so meaningful, they didn't seem to mean anything to these people. So it was maybe a reverse culture shock. And I also lived in Japan for about 3 years and then traveled for another year. So that also caused me a lot of difficulties with returning to London. Again, I had that reverse culture shock. So I think it was always a place where there was, people were forced to come here to kind of, well, sorry to say this, but basically be slaves to the state machine. Mm-hmm. And then people just made the most of what they could. And humanity, the spirit of humanity, even in this harsh city, people still, try to have joy in their lives and try to find the best, that they make the best of what was quite a bad situation. And I think it is deteriorating. I think it is getting worse because of you can see around you the 5G towers. You can see the fact that the community, there was still a bit of community in the past, a lot more than there is now. So I think it's definitely a far harsher place. It was never great, let's be honest, it's my view now, but it's got a lot more harsher. The 20-mile-an-hour speed limits, it's really restricted, the movement of people, bus lanes. They've narrowed down the roads, so people are not able to get from A to B very easily. Trains are not running on weekends when that's your only time to get out and about. So you can't travel very far unless you're willing to take a very long journey and suffer the consequences of a dire experience. So I think that's sort of like the lockdowns. It's the climate lockdowns in a way, or other ways of trying to bring about lockdown. And then I think social media, the gaming culture, the internet, the Netflix has brought people to remain at home. They seem to enjoy working from home. So when you're out and about, London's just a quiet place. There's lots of lights. They've got all these LEDs now. It's extremely bright. I remember at Christmas, everywhere you went outside, lots of lovely lights, but no people. So the lights it was actually quite eerie. It felt very alien to me. And yeah, you go out and the pubs are shut down. The ones that are open, they're quite empty because who's going to, young people don't have the money to go and buy a pint for £8. We had grants from university. When I was at university, we were given money to go to university. Now the poor kids, they're in these horrendous debts with huge interest. I saw the interest rate earlier this year was 8%. This is a government connected with the banks charging 8% on these interests, and they've got them for 40 years now. So, you're constantly building up this debt. So what young person is then going to be thinking about going out clubbing? And the clubs, I saw the other day that there were 36,000 nightclubs in the UK in 1986, and now apparently it's only 1,000. You're hard pressed to find any
wow
on the high streets. You go to any high street in London. Yeah. There's not many people out and about. They just can't afford it. So where are they? They're probably at home, in the comfort of their own home, having very false interactions. Don't get me wrong, this is great to be able to talk, but the energy field is not the same.
Yeah.
As when I want to meet you properly in person. Yeah. We know then that's going to be really explosive and beautiful. But
there will be hugging.
Are not going out.
There will be hugging.
They will be hugging, yes, absolutely. Very much
sure.
So, yes. Can't wait.
For sure. When you describe that as giving, going in for the hug and getting a fist bump, that's basically every second interaction I have. It's me going in for the hug and getting the fist bump. But
yeah, we need it, don't we? We feel the energy when someone wants a hug, even during the COVID years. I remember people who were very much in line with the narrative. Even they occasionally needed a hug. I remember a guy lost his, he was wearing a mask. He's always 2 meters away. He wouldn't touch a piece of paper unless it was practical equipment in the lab, unless it was disinfected for 48 hours. So he was stringent, he was pretty harsh. He said, people working in the NHS, they've got to get the jabs because they're dealing with, infectious patients.
They have to touch all of these papers.
Yes, exactly. But in the end, one day, because he sadly lost his brother, initially he said it might have been something to do with the jab, but obviously later he dismissed that. But yeah, he just needed a hug, and all of the nonsense just fell out of the window, and his humanity came through. And it was a powerful moment for both of us for different reasons. But it came from a place of love, and I think that was very telling.
I think this is another bit because well, there's two things there. First of all, I went on the Doc Malik podcast recently.
Oh, wow. Yes, I saw that. Yeah.
And we got to meet up in person, and that's a really, again, that energy was brilliant. It was brilliant to sit in the same room as him. It was brilliant to sit in the car with someone, have a conversation on the way to somewhere. It was brilliant to have a meal with somebody, have conversations, chit chat. To feel someone's energy is in person is something so much different, and the conversation, the quality of the conversation, everything is lifted by it, and it was very noticeable. And he was, of course, talking about his time in Pakistan. He's from a Pakistani descent and goes back and has this experience. And I've got a lot of for Pakistanis who are in the UK, they like talking to me because I've done a lot of research into the history of Pakistan, mainly due to the articles on nuclear programs. Benazir Bhutto, her father, Zulfikar Ali Bhutto, and the formation of Pakistan in general, East Pakistan, Bangladesh, etc. All of these sort of things. I find it. The same sort of thing came across when I've spoken to multiple people from Pakistan, that they have this experience of they're told, a lot of the time they're told regularly on British or Western media, Pakistan's this dangerous wild west of a place, and then they find it's actually quite, it's exhilarating to have the freedom they have when they go over to Pakistan, and they're like, oh wow, and everybody's so nice, and everybody gets on so well, and that's not true. And we kind of I feel we cloak that darkness that we create with the way we build our society by making the people who live in this country or these Western world, this Western world, scared of their own shadow, let alone what Pakistan must be like, let alone what these different countries must be like. And what you were saying as well about this, and this is what I was going to say about London, because I had this weird experience. I went to France. Now, France isn't that far away, but the French people are extremely unique people. And I went to live in France, and I wasn't ready for it. It was the first time where I'd gone, okay, I'm going to go for somewhere more than a couple of weeks, and I'm gonna try and live somewhere, get a job, and learn the language, and do all of that sort of stuff. So I was down in Lyon, and I discovered very quickly that French people were the grumpiest people around. And I remember standing in the center of Lyon on a busy August day. It was a beautiful day. We were right in the center. It was me and my partner at the time, and we were looking out at all of these metro stations and bus stops, and people are coming up, and the whole thing is just a sea of people swimming around in the city center of Lyon, a very big city. And I said to my partner at the time, have a look and see if you can see someone smiling. And just one smile. Let's just sit here. And she sat there. I played the game as well, of course. She sat there for about 5-6 minutes, solid, looking around. And then the whole time we saw one smile that didn't count because it was a wry smile. It was a woman looking at her boyfriend and doing this kind of, like really cringing smile. He had said something and she was responding with a horrible smile on purpose. But other than that, in the city centre, thousands of people walking around all over the place, couldn't see one smile. And when I got back to Britain, I suddenly saw everybody was smiling. And there was such a big difference. And the real big shock was that the people of London seemed jolly in comparison to the French people. They actually seemed like they were really, really nice friend. And but my experience just before had been, God, London is full of people who were so upset all the time, so angry, so got their heads down, don't want to interact. And I have experienced more. I mean, I spent a couple of Christmases in London with another partner, and discovered that I was walking around the park on Christmas Day saying "Merry Christmas," and people were looking away and looking down and shuffling by as quickly as they could be, so this madman in a park doesn't murder them at any moment.
Yeah.
And you know, I accepted that Londoners are probably going to be a little less content, seeing as their life is a little bit more stressful. They've got to pay double the amount of money for almost everything, and all of this. So there was bound to be an element of that. Also, I come from South Wales, and Wales is a place where, you know, a lot of English people, I think, are brought up with this idea of Wales being this backwards place. And when they come here, they go, "Oh my God, everybody's so lovely and happy and friendly and wonderful."
Absolutely.
And so I come from a place which is a land of song and dance and you know, and hugs. You know, we hug each other regularly in Wales. We do love each other. But that whole experience of coming back and discovering that London isn't actually this monster that I had painted it as in my head. It was actually still a friendly place, but only in comparison to that sort of, you know, experience of another place, like you were saying. But in the same way now, I went to London during COVID, had to work, the energy, it was just like there was no energy there. It was like there was no one there. People were walking around, only a few people were walking around, but it almost felt like they weren't there. That London had become a void of energy. And I felt really, really saddened by it. And I've gone back a few times over the past a few years, sorry, and been really, I felt that same feeling again, feeling like there's a lack of energy there. As a Londoner, you're saying that as well.
It hasn't recovered. Yeah.
Is that just due to COVID? Is that, or, you know, is that just exacerbating an issue that you're saying there? You know, it really is, London is a place where you go to become a digital slave nowadays, I suppose.
Yeah, I think it's COVID has been the major sort of driver of it, and not just the COVID itself, but all the policies around it. Because as a result of COVID, they brought in so many other things, haven't they, that they haven't really removed. They've continued many of those processes and programmed people to live those kind of lives as if they're still living in COVID times to some degree. So people staying at home a lot more. I think that's been major. People fearing each other a little bit more, wary. You know, every time they get a bit of a cold or a flu, they're suddenly a bit worried that I better keep away. You know, there's just a little bit more fear, and I think a lot of other things have been brought up at the same time. I think that trauma during those COVID years people haven't really recovered from it, so they don't quite know that they haven't recovered. They're just carrying on with that trauma and not being able to release that trauma because they're not allowed to, because the state hasn't acknowledged anything was wrong, you know, about what they did. And so people are just continuing suffering, I think. But yeah, you do make a good point. As I say, it reminds me of when I lived in Japan. And Tokyo was quite a harsh city that people wore masks even back in the 90s, and no one really talked to each other. I remember trying to ask for some help, and the person was actually walking away faster and faster from me. Someone told me it was more of the case that they were quite embarrassed that they couldn't speak any English, so they just didn't want to engage. So yeah, Tokyo was even harsher. When I came back to London, yeah, I remember thinking, wow, it's buzzing, people are smiling, we're talking to a lot of people that we don't even know, and they're just chatting away, making friends. And then I realized that's probably my brother, because he came to the airport and he had a group of Belgian people that he met in Belgium on a train, and they were suddenly staying with him. So I think it's also to do with him because he's very sociable. So his sociability made it seem like I'd come back to London to meet all of these new friends that he had made. He said, "Oh, I just met them randomly here and there." So it did feel like a really exciting place. I think a lot of that has to do with people the evenings as well, having a drink or two, and then they unwind a bit. The pubs, the pub culture brings people together, a little bit of a drink and relax them a bit. Not too much drink, but just a little bit. You see the little loosening up a bit. And definitely was a little bit more freedom. This was in about 1999, so it was a long time ago. There was more places to go out. It was a bit cheaper, so people were out and about. Yeah, I think it was definitely a better place than it is now. Now you see the people I don't recognize. I mean, I don't recognize the communities, the Pakistani community. I don't recognize them as people that I can relate to. They're kind of just drifting past the communities from other countries. They're not the black community are not the community I remember growing up with. This is a completely new wave of immigration that has happened. And the people are just not, and I'm not trying to blame these individuals. I think the system's created a group of people who've arrived and there's no integration. They're just living very parallel lives. They're living very different lives. There's very little integration. And you've got there's just no identity anymore in London of what does this place stand for, what are the common courtesies that we have. You just don't know what you're going to expect, and it's just a mishmash of people just coming in, living behind their houses with closed doors, and you never get to know them. You don't get to know them. If you talk to them, they get a bit shocked. They're just like in their own world. It's just this. There's no harmony anymore. I don't know what's happened. I don't recognize these people who are allegedly from Pakistan. It's very strange. I never used to see. So when I was growing up, we had a lot of Pakistanis in the community, of course, but I don't remember seeing people with hijabs. I don't know where this has come from. It's like maybe it was 9/11. I don't know, but a lot of people of Muslim faith from Pakistan have really reverted to the hijab, and that's not something that my mum never wore that. She still and it wasn't a big deal. Whereas now it's become a real big symbol, and we just can't recognize it. It's very strange.
Yeah, I think there's I think that's a quite an interesting point. Is I mean, visually, a black person may look the same as another black person. Someone from Pakistani descent can look the same as someone from Pakistani descent, but the culture that they've been brought up with was very much made our country an interesting place, because the communities were often in the past, they went through a period of segregation. So I would believe that segregation brought some form of uniformity, some sense of community. Nowadays, it seems like they're bussing in as many immigrants from every country. They're putting them all together, and white people, people who are in the UK who are white, look around, and a lot of them say, "Oh, look, there's all of these foreigners." And it's just all this like homogenous group of people, but there's actually loads. There's people who have grown up being British, who have come from different descent, but there's also a lot of people who it's not like it's not homogenous. That's a load of scattered, tiny groups of incoherent communities, I suppose you could say. Sort of communities in the waiting, if they could only segregate themselves for a little bit and spend 20 years fighting against a joint beast that looks the same. Really interesting what you say about the hijab and stuff, because I agree with that. I had Indian and Pakistani people in my Wales has always been a fairly open place. We had sanctuary country, and always welcoming to people, and it was always really good integration, I felt, apart from one jot of a bad sort of like mark in our history was the Somali community got segregated in Cardiff quite heavily, and it took a long time to integrate the Somali community into Wales, into Cardiff life, but I always found that when I would go around, I remember the first time I was staying around my friends who were from Pakistani descent. When I first stayed around their house, I was just amazed. It was like, oh, you live completely differently behind closed doors. It's like I would never have guessed that there's a different world behind there. Their father couldn't speak a word of English. That everybody basically slept on one massive bed in the one room. You know, it was like very shared and stuff, and it was very. There was a lot of Pakistan about how people lived their life still, but yet they assimilated really well and put in the effort. And all my friends, I wouldn't know the difference. My friend, when I was growing up, one of my friends, Power Bears and Sumon, they would like I couldn't like see necessarily color in them. They were the same as me. They liked the same things. We played the same games. We later on we'd play the same computer games and stuff. And there is a big difference to what we see nowadays.
Yeah,
It's very destabilized, and there is no ability for these new wave of immigrants to become part of the community. And
no, there's no mechanism. There's no sense of belonging, and they're sort of just left to their own devices. Just get on with it. And there's just not that care. There's not that community anymore. And part of that problem again is this whole isolation, which was some of the big things that was pushed during the COVID era, which was 2 meters apart, stay on your own, don't visit your grandmother, don't visit your family, no more than 6 people, no gatherings. You know, it was really harsh. And then with all this introduction of working from home even more, the teams, the teams meeting, doing your online lessons, doing your online work, just living off of a virtual world, stuck in your home where you're not getting real experiences. The only experience you're getting is what they're telling you through this social media and through the other legacy media and so forth, and even the mainstream media. It's so the non-mainstream media is so fragmented as well now, isn't it? You don't know even there who to fully trust and who to fully engage with. So it's become a very difficult and a very polarized place. And I think the sheer numbers are just staggering, isn't it? We're talking about 1.2 million or something coming in every year. That was never the case before. I mean, you can't go to many countries in the world and find that kind of diversity we have here. And I think they're just not doing anything. They're keeping it. Everyone's in their very separate pockets. I said, well, I grew up in a very different kind of family because my families used to actually speak English with each other. It was cool to speak English with other Pakistani people, even though they could have spoken Urdu. They wanted to go out and have a party where they had a dance, a house party where they all danced together. They wanted to meet with their Indian friends or their friends from other parts of the world. And now I go to, it's the same. My dad's now married to another person. And we felt really upset because we had an incident where my dad invited a man into the house. My dad's new wife is quite religious. And the chap came into the house and he saw that my stepmother wasn't wearing a hijab. And he just said hello to her. She was really upset with my dad and slammed the door in his face. And was really angry. And the poor man, he didn't know what he had done. And he's known her for ages. They're neighbors. And, it was really awkward because he never understood what he had done. And it was only because she was not wearing a hijab. And every time we go to the house there now, whenever we have a gathering, which we don't like to go there too much because whenever they have a gathering, they always have the women sat in one room looking really miserable. And the men sat in another. It's just like we said, come on, we can't do this. You've got to come and join us. This is ridiculous. You sat there like prisoners waiting your sentence or something.
Like a mental and physical. It's like a mental and physical resegregation. It sounds like where and people are destabilized enough that they've gone back to their communities and realized their own communities have changed because of indeed. I would think that September the 11th and other things would have had, and the war on terror, the supposed war on terror, was the crux of that, because I mean that's where I saw a lot of change. I mean, one little brief story. I went to Belgium about a couple of weeks after September the 11th. I was in a relationship with a girl who was half Belgian, quarter Ukrainian, and quarter Mauritius. Mauritian. I don't know. I think she had a bit of Iranian in there too, and she looked like she was from the Middle East. And I was in the south of Brussels, which is quite heavily Arabic, And like I say, it was just after September 11th. And we walked down the street and I had people spitting on my shoes as I was walking. And it was explained to me is because they were disgusted by the fact that this woman who should have been with a nice Arabic man or etc. Was actually with this white guy walking down the road, and it was such an anger. Brussels is already it was already quite a segregated community as well
Yes.
at times. But I saw that and thought to myself, I really hope that this is not something that we see more of, because it was hard. I think we have seen that, and
Sadly, yes.
you are quite
Absolutely.
right. It's really strange to hear. It's like we had finally started connecting the puzzle
Yes.
pieces to build a community, and
Yes.
then they threw in a load of puzzle pieces that don't match at all
Exactly.
into and without any sort of picture on it,
Yeah.
and they've thrown it in and said you've got to make that part of the board.
Yeah, I can't recognize that. It's just people are just living parallel lives. And yeah, I think it's interesting to talk about Belgium because I had similar experiences with a friend of mine, that friend that my brother made in the Belgian train when he came to England. He said, "You guys," because he said, "Oh, you know, this." He was quite yeah, upset with the ethnic minority communities in Brussels and that part of the capital city there. But he said, "Oh," I said, "Oh, but we're all." You seem to like us. He goes, "Yeah, but you guys are different. You're integrating and you're friendly and you're loving, and that's I get that feeling across London when I meet people." But it's not the same in Belgium. I don't like those Moroccan communities. They're very aggressive with us, and so it's like there's something different. And at that time, I couldn't quite understand it. I hadn't spent very long in Belgium, but I did see there was a lot of segregation, and he was quite oppressive towards those communities. Whereas in London, he was completely like in love with all the different diversity here. He said, "But it's different over here. You don't understand." I said, "Okay, this is very interesting." And now I'm starting to kind of understand. And I remember dating. I dated a South African black lady, and we went to Durban, which is a heavily, well, it's got a very large Indian population. And I remember it was awkward. It was not comfortable being with her. And I remember she felt very awkward. And we didn't, thankfully, no one was spitting at us, but some very, a few nasty words spoken, a lot of stares. It was very uncomfortable. And
Amazing that in a sense, Gandhi himself would have had the same sort of experiences in the other way in South Africa. That's amazing.
yeah, I really felt for her, particularly. I really felt for her. It's just, yeah, it must have been very, very difficult for her. But yeah, that was another interesting experience in South Africa. I think travel helps a lot. You've done a lot of travel. How long did you live in Lyon for? Was it in France?
I lived in Beaugoin-Jallieu for a while, just outside Lyon, and lived in Lyon on and off for about a year and a bit. I mean, it was difficult because I didn't again. I didn't take to that sort of manner, that segregation. I didn't like any of that. It affected me emotionally quite a lot. I didn't feel. I found it. I was exploring it, to be honest. It was awkward for the French people, more than anything, because in Lyon's a really segregated city, and I was living in a place called Avenue Franklin Roosevelt, which is like this really nice road in Lyon that goes connects on to, I think, Avenue Winston Churchill. They're named after the saviors of France, all of
Yes.
these Western saviors. And the main road is full of beautiful flats, houses, really, really nice, lots of shops, lots of community, nearly all white, nearly all French. You go 2 blocks either side of it, and you're in the banlieues, or you're in the places which are the segregated areas where Arabic people and black people are stuck. Also, and there's a massive Moroccan, Algerian community in France, of course, a massive black community, and at that point, it was something like 20% of France was, made up of these sort of ethnic communities. And what I discovered is a very interesting moment in my life, to be honest, was that French people were so nasty to these individuals that, and films and media, especially films, Lane, The Hate, as is called,
Yes.
was an amazing French film, and it showed this sort of like ghetto-like place, and those actually existed. Those actually existed, and I was told by French people I could not go to those places, and I said, I don't think that's going to work for me, partially because I smoke weed as well. So, you know, the best place to find weed are always the most underdeveloped and rundown areas. So, and I would leave my little Avenue Franklin Roosevelt and I would go off and I would walk around, and I discovered it was very simple. The rules were very simple. If you were white and French and you walked into that area, you would probably be abused, shouted at, assaulted, and kicked off and kicked out, because French people historically, white French people historically, have been so bad to these communities and were continuously so bad that they were despised. However, like you say there, and as a British person, I would let these, and the first time I walked into one of these areas, I had people, gang of kids, black and Arabic. They looked at me. They were just looking at each other. You know, these white people ain't walking around here. They walked up to me to start having a little bit of they were saying stuff to me as they were coming towards me. I was like, all right, gents, what's going on? And instantly they broke, all of them, big smiles, open arms. Oh, you're British. Oh, and they want to get to know you because they've seen American culture. They've seen British culture. They have family over in Britain sometimes. You know, they've gone over there and everybody's friendly, and, you know, and the segregation doesn't exist like it. And suddenly it's like every time I had someone who was from another, another of another ethnicity come towards me in France with any on bus stations, metro platforms, you know, looking for trouble. As soon as I spoke to them in English, they would just break into a big smile. They'd be your best friend. They'd want to talk about rap music. They want to talk about, you know, all of the different cultural differences that lead them to find, you know, English culture a lot more appealing than French culture because of their experience. And I think a lot of that is the sort of French way. So I think that's what we're describing.
Yes, it's not the color of your skin. It's more the case of they've got a bit of a beef with some of the French, and that's more the issue.
It's the color of your culture.
Exactly, that's more the issue. I mean, I went to New York, I remember, in the 90s, and again, that was a great experience because once you got uptown, past, I think it was somewhere like 90, I can't remember, it was such a long time ago, past that, I think it was before Columbia University, around there, 90th Street or something. It was all just either Hispanic people or black people. And I remember a lot of white people told me, you don't want to go up there. For me, it was quite easy because as soon as I crossed over, people were speaking to me in Spanish. They thought I was of the Hispanic community myself. So I had a great time going up to Harlem. But it was really divided. It was a real fight. You wouldn't see hardly any, if at all, any white people. And then I came back to London and thought, oh, thank God, because I wouldn't want to live in this sort of divisional place. And see, at least in London, everyone's around here is from a different community. So yeah, we were not brought up to be divided here very much. Over there, we were quite divided. So that's my phone going. So sorry about that.
That's all right.
Yeah, so it was a lot better. It was a lot better from that point of view, growing up here. I think so. There were a lot of good qualities in London in that sense, I think.
There's. I mean, let's get into some of the nuts and bolts of you, because I mean, you're a filmmaker and you make really good looking films as well. It's not just you make films, you make really good looking films as well. I'd say obviously you've had the a bit of Asian cinema has rubbed off on you to an extent. That might be something to do with your journeys in Japan, etc. Let's Let's talk about movies a little bit, because officially, I believe you're a teacher first and foremost. But what was your? Did you go to university, study films? Is that
No, I
what
studied
happened?
physics actually, which is why I'm a physics teacher now. Yeah.
Yeah.
I was quite interested in energy when I was young, and I didn't really have many other subjects that I studied with any interest at the time. I think it was a case of these were the only choices as well, to be honest. It was either because my parents took me to Pakistan, so I couldn't. I thought I'm not going to be here for very long, so there's no point in trying to learn Urdu, which is probably terrible. I wish I had now, but I didn't bother with that. I wasn't interested in Islamic studies, so I never went to that. I wasn't interested in Pakistan study. These are three subjects you had to do. But as a person who just arrived from England, I didn't have to study them for some reason, managed to get myself out of it. Because they said that I'm not, he struggles in English as well, because they did a lot of grammatical English. So I wasn't, I'd never been taught grammar, so I didn't understand any of what they were on about. Which is quite embarrassing because it's your native language. And there were only a few other subjects they offered, which were the sciences and the maths, and I was not very good at that either. I didn't know what H2O was, and I would have been about a year 10. So I said to the teachers, pardon my language, to speak fucking English, man. I think I even got expelled, but my parents begged me to let them back in. And I thought I can go back to England now, but my dad wasn't having it. So these were the only kind of subjects, and I started to take, I don't know why, but the teacher sort of realized that this guy, he's kind of wants to learn, but he's struggling here. Now I understand his situation. And he started to give me a bit of time, particularly in chemistry. So I started off, my love for science really grew with chemistry, and he just made it quite interesting and gave me a bit more time. And because he took some interest in me, then I was very interested in what he had to offer. So I started to pick it up and started to understand some things, started to question things. Then I got into physics, and I thought, well, to be honest, these were the only subjects that I enjoyed, and so I thought I'll just pursue these subjects. So I pursued physics and maths, and then did physics at university. It wasn't quite what I expected. It was more like calculus and maths most of the time. So I got disinterested, and I ended up going to Japan and just to teach English, just to have a break from everything. So, but I've always liked physics, although it hasn't always given me the answers. But I'm particularly, just what I realize is I'm just particularly interested in energy and frequency, and it makes sense in every way in my everyday life, I think now. And it's not so much the mainstream physics; it's the other side of everything that I'm all, the laws of life, the laws of nature, the universal laws of life, the universal the law of nature that just particularly interests me. I think that one of the biggest things that every week's like that's what I'm talking about, this download. Last week I was in a different place. This week I'm in another place. And one of the things that's really been of great interest to me is this, it's all about energy, but I think it's this connection with the subconscious mind inside and then the conscious mind outside. And the magic of the subconscious mind. It is absolutely infinitely intelligent, and if you start to connect to it a lot more, you realize that nothing's, happening by accident. It's all happening by your thought. So thought is the cause, and the effect is the condition that you're in afterwards. And you think it's because of all the predominant thoughts that I have. And so whatever we think, they say, I think, therefore I am, or you think a thought, I want to make a chair so that people can sit on it. Someone invented a chair, but it came from a thought, and then it became the condition. And when you start to really work on that, which is hard because we're always distracted, but if we can keep taking those negative thoughts and keep feeding our subconscious mind, which is infinitely intelligent because it's the universe, really, or God. If we can put good things into our thoughts, good manifestations will happen, I think. But we don't always do that. And we have to do it with real conviction. But we don't always believe because we're so programmed to think, oh, what if that happens? Or, oh, I might, I can't do that. I've got to work. And that's what happened with that conversation I had with that lady who was saying, the government wouldn't be that nefarious. What do they have to benefit from doing some geoengineering? And I can't go down that route. But she did say to me in a positive ending where I said, I'm not trying to be negative here. It's the negativity that has brought me into the light. And now I can see beyond that. And that's why I'm getting out of this mess, and I'm trying to actually break free, cutting the tentacles that have slaved me for so long. There's so many tentacles. And it takes time. I feel now like I'm on the run. I've broken out of the prison, but I'm still being chased. It will take me a couple of months before I actually get out fully. But I've broken out of the prison, and now they're chasing me on the hunt and on the run, if you like, but I'm almost home free. And she said, it's really great that you can do that. And I wish I could do that. So she understood, she just couldn't see it for herself. And it's because of all those negative thoughts. What if, poverty staring, how can if I leave my job, how am I going to live? What am I going to survive on? And they can't see it. And therefore that's the difficulty. But if you just keep, those negative thoughts will keep coming. But if you just keep telling yourself, wait, no, come on, it's going to be all right. And you practice, you've got to practice this. You've got to feed the good things to the subconscious. And the subconscious leaves your body and goes all across, because it can do that. It can do that and go all around the universe, wherever it needs to get what it needs back into your mind to say, this is how you do it. There's the answer. You sometimes have this. You wake up in the morning, night before, you had no idea, how on earth am I going to do this? Or which way shall I go? They're offering me this, they're offering me, I don't know, I can't make a choice here, I'm stuck. And in the morning, the answer comes in a dream, or you just wake up and it's there. And I believe in the magic power of it, because I think when we were born, and what's going on in our body now, none of us have any idea, but it's happening silently. The cells are regenerating, the children are growing, the mother gets pregnant, and the body creates everything that's required for that baby to survive and flourish. And so all the miracles around us have happened to us, the healing, and I think our bodies the subconscious wants to heal us. It wants to preserve us. Self-preservation is our automatic instinct, I think. And I think from that, if we could just realize that this is a miracle and we are part of that miracle. And if we tap into this, we will become unstoppable. But they know that, the darker forces, whatever you call that, they know that. So they keep bringing us back down, crashing down, or trying to get us to conform, take the ticket, queue up, do as you're told, do your job 9 to 5. We live in a prison. Let's not mince any words, Johnny. I mean, I was thinking about it. You know, the prison has prison guards, and the prison guard is yourself, because of what they put into your mind. So you can break free, but the trouble is you're your own worst enemy. And then you've got, when you think you're on parole, you never quite always make it. Or they tell you you're going to be free, but then a lot of people end up in a care home. And then they rob those people of their lives. They rob them of their pensions. They take their houses. So they're never quite fully free. And then you've got all the other mechanisms of prison. You know, you've got the work, the 9 to 5, where they just suck you dry, so, and they tax you. I mean, we're taxed to the hilt in this country, isn't it? I think the only thing which is interesting, which again came to me this week, the only thing we're not taxed on is gold. So, so you know, we don't have to pay capital gains tax on that, or VAT. Everything else is just taxed. It's horrendous, isn't it? It's phenomenal. And so I think that there's so many prison mechanisms here that people can't realize, and that's why they feel like they can't get out, and they become institutionalized.
A lot of it is, like you say, there, self-imprisonment. I think every wall in that proverbial prison cell is made up of bricks that say "what if," and you put them out there and you pile them up next to each other and you build layers and layers, because you can say "what if" till the cows come home, and never come to a conclusion, because it's not a question that has an answer at the end. Usually people say, what if this happens? Or let's not think about that, rather than, but what happens? What if? They ask themselves a question that they don't intend to answer. And it's, I suppose it's people like ourselves who are busy trying to find the answers to that. I would not have looked in physics, because physics is, out of all of the subjects and courses I did in school, I was bad at a fair few of them, because I wasn't a big fan of the system, of any systems like that, and so I've always been against feeling like I'm caged. But physics was one of the hardest for me, one of the hardest.
Yeah, the kids tell me that all the time. But we just have interesting conversations. You know, it's great. That's the whole fun of it at school, is to have a bit of fun, to make it fun for them and enjoyable as possible, and ask those questions that even sometimes I don't have the answer for. And just to try and tell them when we talk about, when we're telling them about the electromagnetic spectrum, I try to make them imagine that the entire spectrum is light, but it's not light that we can see. So there must be so many things going on in it. We might not be able to feel them, but there could be so many different things in this room that we just
realities.
Reality.
So
yes.
many different. Your reality changes once the color changes.
Exactly. And so there's all of that to talk about. Then there's about, you know, where we come from, where we're going. Energy, I think I always tell them energy is the currency of life, because if tomorrow the supermarkets they've got no food and you've got £10,000 in your pockets, I mean, your money's worthless, useless. And again, I was telling them that it's not even on the, it's not based on any commodity anymore. You know, it's completely devalued, and that's where we're heading, to the point where it will be worth nothing. Your time will never be worth anything. Your time that you spent and effort that you put into work might be worth nothing.
But the time that you put into spreading positivity is worth, there's no value to that. It's priceless. It truly is priceless. I spent a lot of time in I was so upset with society for quite a while, quite a large period of my life, that I kept I didn't want to communicate with people except if they somehow you know, I would allow them into my life, you know. And I changed mainly. I mean, part of it was due to COVID as well. I'd already started to change my mindset as I got older to being, okay, I like communicating with people. But once I was told that I wasn't allowed to communicate with people, well, you don't want to tell me that. That was when I came out and decided that's exactly when I got to communicate with people.
Thank goodness.
Yeah, and I would say I had a couple of different experiences during that time, because I was a part living in South America during lockdown. So when lockdown started over here, I was in South America, but it already started in South America, and they were testing out the lockdowns over in Chile, where I was. So we had all of we had a very strict sort of regimented lockdown over there, and people were harshly punished.
Yes.
For breaking any of the rules. It was a very sad experience. But when I was coming backwards and forwards, I was sometimes living 3 months over here, 6 months over there, 3 months over here, 3 months over there, etc. And what I found over here is that over the past 5 years since lockdown started, I've become really well known in my community for the fact of what you were saying there. It's not for the fact I have loads of money, not the fact that I argue with people about the jabs in the park, because honestly, my neighbors might not necessarily appreciate all of my views, and I know that fully well. But it is the energy. It is all about the energy.
Yeah.
I come to people with positive energy, and I say to them, if you ever need anything, I am here to help you. And then I back that up by helping them whenever they need help, and being positive and being caring and saying, hey, you don't need all of these systems, all these organizations out there. They are nothing. They are worthless. They are ready to be dropped for the next bit of tyranny that they'll implement. They don't look to the establishment for answers. Don't look for TV's answers. Look for the people who you stand next to understand where you are in the world, because it's where you're standing and who you're looking at it dictates a lot of what our life is like. I mean, it is going back to a little bit at the start. Is that part of the reason why London has lost its shine? Because it was already hard to build community, or at least I suppose I would say express energy in that cauldron when it's a bit of a void. Is that part of the reason why it's become too much for you? You're going away? Because I don't know if you said it on while we've been recording, but you were telling me that you were looking to leave London.
Yes, I think at least to get out of London. I think because it's a trap, it's a sort of bear trap because you've got you've got the mortgages and then the interest rate keeps changing and it can just suck you up. There's taxes, you have to pay huge tax now, even if you wanted to rent out a property as a small landlord because you just happen to be not living here for a while. So it just makes no sense. And then there's inheritance tax, which is I think 40% of if you had a property worth $1 million, it's 40%. So even a property in London being $1 million, it sounds like a lot. It's in London, it's not that much anymore. A property that was worth, let's say, 200,000 15 years ago is now worth 500,000 now. So in a couple of years' time, it could be worth $1 million. So there's, how would you leave this house to your child? You're not going to leave this house to your children. That's sometimes one of the reasons why people buy homes is also not just for themselves, but you're thinking of your grandchildren or your children, but they're not going to be able to, where they're going to get £200,000 in their pocket to save themselves from losing the house. So then I saw all of these things. I saw so many other problems, sadly, unfortunately, but I just saw a better life elsewhere. And I thought there's a balance. I'm not saying anywhere is going to be perfect. I'm not quite ready to go off grid. I do like some of the, this is what we're having this interaction here with the internet. This is also important. And there's some aspects of this system that we are engaged in. Our families are engaged in that system. So I'm not completely ready to go and drop everything. But there's a balance. It's striking that balance where you have freedom. And here, I just, you didn't feel like you had freedom. You're getting fines all the time in case you're driving in a bus lane or you're stuck in a yellow box junction or you parked in the wrong place. Surveillance cameras are everywhere.
The ULEZ cameras popping up all over the place.
Yeah. The cost, of course, as you said, the cost of food and drink and transport and the time, and then people are consuming you. There's a lot of people calling me up. There's very tragic cases. Someone called me up the other day and sorry, I haven't been around for your work for 6 months because I've got depression and I'm waiting for the NHS to, well, basically cure me. That's not going to happen. Very sad to hear
I
that.
was there at one point. Yeah, whatever.
Yeah, so, and there's another poor man who I really like. He's got cancer, and his wife died of cancer a couple of years ago. They've got this daughter with learning difficulties who was only 7 when her mother died. This chap is fairly young. He's not much older, probably a bit younger than me, and the girl is still only about 13. And, they lost one parent and his wife, and now he's telling me he's got cancer and they're saying it's everywhere and he's going to go for the chemotherapy. And it's heartbreaking, isn't it? It's so, everything is so, and this all consumes you, and you want to help as much as you can, but you can only do so much because people have to take a step as well in the right direction. And it's just, you keep trying, you keep doing your best.
You believe in a little bit in fate, though.
Again?
You believe a little bit in fate, in the fact that you're kind of like you're in the place, you end up in the place where you need to be to help the people that you can help at the moment that you can help.
I think so. Yeah, I do believe that it's all but also you change your own destiny by your thoughts.
Mm-hmm.
So yes, the fate things may happen, but they can always change depending on what your thought. I don't think anything is written ahead that, this is unless, of course, if that's your thought process, then maybe those things will be written, but you can change those thoughts. And then your life goes in another direction. I just thought, and at school, I said, I did a lot of things I possibly could, and it's just eating me up. It's just tiring me out, making me very ill. Working with the children, they're not allowing us to spend much time where we can have a holistic and a chat with the children, a kind of general chat, because sometimes just want someone to listen to. They don't want to talk about physics. They've got other bigger problems. They've got so many problems as they're developing, and the world around them is confusing them. It wasn't so long ago that in this country we had puberty blockers given to children. That's shocking to believe that this was happening, and this whole confusion around gender and encouraging children. It's one thing for an adult, but to do this whole agenda on children. So to work in that environment's been very tough, and you don't get a lot of time with the kids because they're driving you on to get, you've got to do this is your job, you've got to teach, you've got to do this. They're giving you little time to spend, and now they're saying if any colleague of yours is over friendly with the children, you must report this as a safeguarding. So you're thinking, that's how am I going to, what are they
My
doing?
my favorite teachers were over friendly, and they
Yeah,
didn't touch me
exactly.
inappropriately. So
No. I
that
got
was
35 children coming in my room at lunchtime. They just want to be there. And what do? I can't turn them away. That's not my character. They want to come there because they feel like it's a sanctuary, it's a place. I know this because they've sent me some cards and letters and they tell me that, we're suffering from anxiety, but you never cease to, you always cheer us up. And that's very important for a lot of these kids, because a lot of them have got mental health challenges that can all be fixed, I think. But not if you're having this environment where you're telling them, this is what you've got, we're going to medicate you, or they're seeing no way out because there's nowhere for them to go. So if they can come to my classroom and they want to talk or just want to hang out with their friends, then it's really fun and they're happy. And if they're going to make an environment where, you can't even do that, then that was my only kind of last thing where I had a bit of a hope to sort of talk to them.
truly is just throwing baby after baby out after with the bathwater over and over again. It's a case of, oh, this rare thing happens that we could enter into safeguarding measures to counteract, but instead what we're going to do is say that the best parts of human nature that the nastiest people use are the things that we're going to criminalize or we're going to try and push out of our society are the best parts of human nature, just because that's the best parts of human nature are the same things that evil people utilize to control people and to get
exactly. And it's it's a fine line, of course, I do understand, but I think they've crossed it for me. And in so many other ways too. The way that they treat the children, they're sort of like a Gestapo agency, checking every aspect of the uniform. I can't even keep up with it because it's so dark. The nose stud, the size of the type of the chain, the eyelash. It's
that didn't work in my
school. I do that. I can't do anything else, and it's so daft, and I don't agree with it. I tell the kids, look, do you ever see me wearing a lanyard? So I can't penalize you for not wearing your coloured lanyard, because I never wear one myself, because I'm not a product. And they love it. And it's like, the rebellion with me, they do enjoy it. They come there, they say, oh, we can't do, they ask me permission to go to drop something into the bin. I said, you don't have to ask.
Oh my Lord.
Don't have to ask me. So, but all the other teachers tell us that if we don't do that, we'll get a detention. They forget their booklets. Now, I forgot my booklets when I was at school. I still forget. I said, look, I forgot to bring one of my diaries today. So it happens. It's no big deal, because, so I'm not going to get detention. I said, of course not. Of course not. No, don't worry. Just I've got a spare book. You can have that. So of course they do love me for that. And the toilets, you're supposed to, I don't even know how long. Someone told me the other day that you let a child out for more than 10 minutes. We found her in the toilets. Was she actually, no, they said, if she was out of your room for more than 10 minutes, you must fill in some long form on a Friday afternoon, right? She's having a chat with a friend. And of course, my answer was, it wasn't, I didn't even respond because it wasn't more than 10 minutes. It probably was, but it's not a big deal. And the other person, my other colleague, of course, I'm really sorry. Yes, I'm really sorry that I let my student out. And then the two of them were having this conversation outside the toilets. And so, I'm really sorry. And so everyone's so conforming. Yeah. Like, it's not a big deal. I'm not going to actually, I know that girl's dad anyway. I've known him for a long time. And I'm not going to have an argument with him over the fact that his daughter was in the toilet for 10 minutes. It's ridiculous. And the numbers, the 5 minutes this, and, we're not going to give it attention because it's under 10 minutes. But she was wandering around. God. It's insane. And, this stuff. And so I don't engage with that. If the child wants to go to the toilet, they say, have you got I need a toilet pass. I said, you don't need a toilet pass, just go to the toilet. But if I get caught by the deputy head or, this SLT team, then I'm going to get in trouble. I said, look, I'm going to do a magic spell on you. Abracadabra, you're invisible. Just look straight ahead. Don't look at anyone to distract. Just go straight. You're invisible now. And they get really happy. I said, no problem. If anyone says anything, you talk to me, nothing. And of course they come back, no one saw us. I think it was invisible. And they love that kind of, that kind of, because I just want to show them we've got the power. You've got the power. We can do this. We don't need to worry. They're all stressed about the exams. It turned this place into a Singaporean kind of nightmare, where they're just bombarded with tests and it doesn't matter. Just relax, enjoy yourself.
You need teachers who will teach you how to break the rules. So in a sense, you need rules there, because you need to teachers who will teach you how to get round the unnecessary rules.
Yeah, disobedience is important if something's ridiculous.
Yes.
You know, don't get me wrong, there's some things that you want some discipline, but most of the stuff, when you listen to it, you just have to laugh, and then they get really happy because they also find it ridiculous. And to find an adult, because they don't seem to find many adults, they said, not even our parents, not even, and just to find one adult who agrees with them and laughs with them, it validates what they're feeling, and it gives them more strength and gives them more courage.
And gives them more connection with other humans. And
yeah, exactly.
I when you were talking now, I was just thinking of, I mean, I'm very proud of this, but when I first went to school, I went to the shop to buy the school uniform. You know, there's a couple of special shops where your school supplies school uniforms to the shop, and you get it. And it was a shirt, a tie, a jumper with the little thing on, and a blazer, and it was and you had to wear them all. That's especially the first 3 years. After the first 3 years, you could drop the jumper for a while. You could, but you always had to have your tie on. You always had to have your shirt on. You always had to have your blazer on, etc., etc. And I just started dropping the blazer very quickly. And then I started dropping the tie, and I was the only person in my school to drop the tie. And I discovered that what it meant was I would walk down the corridor and a teacher would stop me and say, "You're not wearing your tie." And I'd say, "I don't have my tie." And they'd say, "Okay, go to wherever you need to go to get your tie." All right, then. Then I'd continue walking down the corridor, and another teacher would stop me and say, "You don't have your tie." And this just continued. And in my fourth form or fifth form, so year 9, 10, 11 sort of time, school photographs, you've got all of this like year lined up all smartly thing, and me with no tie on. Even on the school photo, they had a box full of ties, and I just ignored them. I just learned that you just got to ignore. If you decide a rule is inane, you've got to ignore it, and you've got to be willing to argue it. And what you discover is, as soon as you argue it, adults don't want to argue with children. They'll either try and punish you, but most of them would then have to take time out of their own day to punish you. Or they'll just leave you be the naughty boy who gets away with it in school. And so I just walked around with my shirt, with my open, just accepted it, and it was just a case of challenging it. It was just a case of challenging authority. And you need teachers who will be able to challenge authority, because, and it's a real.
You care about those children, you care about them, and you see what they're going through. And there's no problem. We have, one guy said, because I've had a few run-ins with other colleagues, of course, because of the way that I'm very different to them. They even said, "I think you're very like free spirit, aren't you? You don't like rules." And they said to me, "Actually, we look at your class results because your classes are the loudest, and everyone's laughing and having a good time and learning. That's the key thing." And they said the results of the kids with their exams is still no different to any other result. Yet they were still trying to penalise me for in all sorts of ways, to say that you're not conforming to the way. You're
not one of us.
You're not one of us. But the results are the same or better. So I think the most important thing is, kids are stressed. They're not going to. I mean, these tests are ridiculous, because they could probably do those questions far better if they were not under test pressure. But under test pressure, a lot of them go blank. And that happened to me as well. So it's not a sign of their intelligence or anything. And a lot of the stuff they're being taught, I mean, it's a lot of nonsense, to be honest. Even some of the physics, you think, and we're not questioning whether are these things they call fossil fuels, are they really fossil fuels? Or are they really that scarce, or is that the scarcity is what they're using to overprice these things? Is gold really down to there only 20% left in the earth to mine? And there's so many other questions, isn't it? The whole climate con, they don't call it global warming anymore, isn't it?
I know.
There's all of that to go through. You try your best. You just try your best to say, look, if something's ridiculous, it's got to be challenged. Disobedience is very important. Civil disobedience in a polite way is very important. And if something doesn't make sense to you, you should question it, without arguing, not without getting angry, but just energetically keeping you calm, stay cool, avoid if you can. And if you are confronted, you've got to obviously, then you have to challenge in the best way possible. And that's all you do. And I think that was what a lot of my brother's film, Gods of Their Own Religion, was very much about people disobeying and standing up to, the dystopian nightmare that we're living in. There are a couple of rebels who are still surviving in, if we're not careful, what could be our future, where it was already very dystopian. Most of society had fallen and collapsed into conformity. Nations were shut down from other nations, so you couldn't fly anymore. But there were these rebels who were still non-conforming. But, if we're not careful, that's where we could end up, isn't it? Because so many people did go along with the whole COVID narrative, which was sad. And we do need to question things. And a lot of people have lost the ability to do that, I think. So
question about that. So this is really, what was it? Your brother who has got you into filmmaking? Was it your brother who dragged you in, or did you actually drag him in some way, or how
I
did
dragged him. I dragged
Yeah.
him. He was working at the dry cleaners, and I had no one that I knew that I could turn to. So he was the easiest person that I could turn to. Although I don't know why I turned to him, because he was at the dry cleaners working. But he took every opportunity to get involved. And I think it suited him probably even more than me, because he's a very much a people's person. He loves to work with people. He loves to try to understand them. So it seemed to be a great catalyst for him when I took him out to help get him involved in some of the films that I was trying to make at the time. But he's taken it to the next level, I think. I think with this film, it's really depicts exactly, where we could be heading and the future if you're not very careful. And no other film's actually gone against the grain. No other fictional feature film that I've seen has gone against the grain of the COVID narrative. And he was actually filming it in April when it all first kicked off. Opposing all the rules. And if you think about it, all of this narrative, it is a narrative. It's either, my brother said, I'm either going to make my own film, or we're going to be following these clowns' story, because they were telling us to act like we've got it. They were telling us their story, and they wanted us to be the Trumans in their Truman Show. And my brother said, I want to make a film that's my own narrative. I don't want to follow their narrative. We were paying for all of this. We were monsters, not personally, but our fellow humans became monsters because they snitched on their neighbors. They stopped seeing their grandparents. They ended up harming themselves. They ended up harming their children, with jabbing and all sorts of other things and masking them. Our society became monsters because we complied with their narrative. And we paid tax for all their measures. We paid for these jabs through our taxation. So he wanted to say, we've got to take charge. We're not going to follow their narrative. We're going to do it our way, because their way is absolutely, evil.
And so for a lot of people now, I probably want to go back to where all of this film making began and how that's how you got there with your life. But just a question on that, because I remember having a conversation with you about this in one of the interviews for TNT. Is just, for a lot of people, they would have said, how would you have got so many people who are against the COVID narrative to be involved in such a feat? But it's the majority of people probably weren't in the same sort of way of thinking as you or your brother.
No, definitely not. I think most of them are not. My brother said most of them ended up taking the jab. One was, the main lead actor was actually very uncomfortable with anything that was going on, very upset. I think he somehow plowed ahead with the film. I think, again, on a subconscious level, all the people stuck with him because they needed this. They had nowhere else to go in the isolation. This gave them a chance to go out there and be human again and be amongst people, whereas many of them would go back to their worlds. And their worlds were this very harsh, satanic reality, if you like. Was when he came out on the set, they were all amongst each other. They were doing something. They were remembering a little bit of who they were, and it was like living a dream. They were living the dream, but then they'd have to go back to the nightmare. But my brother was obviously living the dream all the time. And when I was with him as well as the associate producer, and my son as well, who was featured in the film too, for us it was fantastic because we were always living the dream. But it was nice to get these people together because briefly we didn't ask them, what's their thoughts. We were so busy making the film, but we could just see that none of them were inhibited, barring them, one of the lead actors. The rest of the people, they were hugging. It always comes back to hugging. They were staying out till late, till 4 a.m. Everything. They were not wearing masks.
Bad people.
They complete bad. And the police were even saying, "This is great. Yes, carry on," because they thought filming's okay. Although a lot of people were very angry because he wanted to. He made it known to the social media that he was going out to film. Who's with me? He said. And then a lot of people that sponsored him, a lot of the insurance stuff, they all pulled out. Some of the festivals pulled out. So he lost a lot of
that's disgusting.
Credibility in the industry. And,
it's disgusting. In the art world, there should always be a place for the counterculture to thrive.
Well, they all went along with it. You see, all the artists, all the cultural institutions, they all.
I found the rock and rollers to be the most disappointing. On every level. I mean, I know people will say, Jella Biafra, Fat Mike from NoFX, bloody what's his face from Foo Fighters. Dave Grohl and a lot. Yeah. They were all instantly, like Rage Against the Machine became Rage for the Machine all of a sudden. It just
strange.
Unbelievable, but it happened at a local level too. I spent years in bands, singing on stage, screaming on stage, and enjoying being around the community, and it destroyed large parts of the local music community that had already been decimated by what you pointed out earlier, by the lack of nightclubs, the lack of music venues that were then available for people to utilize. Because Cardiff used to be the capital of song in the UK. It used to have clubs galore playing music every night, and it just like one after another got closed down because they're building swanky apartments in the city centre, etc. over years, and it led to this. But I had some people who I loved, who I grew up with, who I loved very much, who became horrible people. I have just got to say that. Horrible people during COVID became almost like the establishment narrative allowed them to refill their ego, and anything that they had come in control of was suddenly out of control again, and they had a reason to suddenly look cool and look like they were doing the right thing by supporting something that was insane. And I know a fair few of those. I know a few who I believe have been damaged by the jabs who went along with this. I feel really sorry, but it did destroy large parts of like cultural community as well. So when did you first get involved in making? Because it wasn't just through COVID. It's been for a long time you've been making.
Yeah, I was doing it since I was writing stories. Even at school, I was always writing stories. And I remember my brother was involved from the very beginning because he was my audience. So I would read the stories to him, I think. And sometimes he wasn't interested. But I think when I left Pakistan, he had to stay a little bit longer. I came back and then he found the stories and he read them and he loved them. And he always talks about it. And he says a lot of your early work, obviously, you didn't have the budget or the know-how how to make the film, look really glossy, but you always had this vision. And he said some of the stuff you made is kind of playing out now. You were making these dystopian things way back, and you could almost see what's happening now as if you had this visionary thing. At that time, I didn't realize, of course, but again, that's why I think it's like quite miraculous that everything that what's happening in our lives before, it all kind of makes sense now. So yeah, since I was about 15, 14, I was always writing and writing stories and making good characters and trying to do comic strip. I wasn't very good at that, but I just enjoyed doing it. And then I wrote some scripts, they didn't get anywhere, and I got really fed up, and I thought, why do I have to wait for someone else to tell me that I can make this film? Why don't I just go and make it myself? It was pretty dismal because the sound was absolutely dreadful. So no one could really hear what was being said. So we sneaked out of the screening of our first film because of the poor sound. But at least we made something, you know, and we really enjoyed it. I think one of the best parts of making films is that, yeah, we didn't have anyone. I said, I only had my brother to turn to. He was the nearest person I get hold of. And then we go together with him. He built some courage up in me because he's a very confident young man. So he built some confidence that we could just go on the train and start asking people if everyone wants to be in a film. And believe it or not, we managed to get this most random people. We met this lady who was from Switzerland. She must have been in her 60s. We were about in our early 20s. I was about 24. My brother was about 19. And she got off the train and tapped us on the shoulder and said, you said about the film. What's this film? And she was quite keen. And she had all these snakes, and we remember we wanted to do something about cloning. So we said we'll film her snakes as if they're sort of, this is a clone snake, and we can't tell the difference. So she was great. She had all these snakes, and she was in about 3 of my first films. So it just like became a community. You realize you were kind of craving to have some people to work with, to do something creative. Creativity is again what's been stifled. This whole narrative of COVID, they really wanted to do that. They said, for example, you know, you're going to have these posters showing ballerinas. You're going to have to retrain, but it's okay. And, you know, a lot of the arts were really seen as something that has to be stopped, even though this is one of the most therapeutic things that you can do for health. And they were just attacking arts and culture and music and mainly the smaller, you know, the independent people were really under attack. The corporations are sort of surviving very well, but the small independents, this was an attack first and foremost on the independent people. Mm-hmm. And once you got rid of the independence, then you bring them into dependence. Then the next people they're attacking is the middle class because they go along with everything the state tells them. And then the state just sort of drops them suddenly somewhere down the line, which I think is still to happen because they're all the ones who ended up taking the jabs. And sadly, and it's no doubt now that so many people are very, very ill. Every week I hear someone telling me they think it's because of the jabs. But there'll be more people saying that it's because of the jabs if the doctors and all the other organizations affiliated with medicine would actually admit the truth, because they're told not to make that connection and they're not given any tools or information to make that link. But people are coming and saying they think it's because of the jabs all the time. You've said it yourself, I'm sure, isn't it, that people have come and you feel as well and they've confessed. I can't believe the number of confessions. Mm-hmm. It's a lot of regret from a lot of people. And a lot of people just went along with it. They didn't mean no one any harm. They just didn't have the courage to be the one that says, I'm going to be different. They didn't want to offend anyone on the train. Some of them thought there was this illness and I don't want to harm anyone. So you do have some sympathy with a lot of people really, because a lot of them they weren't oppressing anyone else. They were just
some of the nicest people in the world were forced to die.
Yeah.
Full stop, were forced to die. One of the ladies run by me, a wonderful woman who, her effect on our community can never be understated. Sue, she helped run a local corner shop, and that was a central hub for loads of people before COVID. It was already a central hub, and nobody really realized how much Sue was helping people. Who, I think Sue's originally from Pakistani descent. The whole family had run the shop. It was a family-run shop. And I was talking to someone about it recently, and you know, I talked about her story a little bit on TNT because all of her family are well aware that it was the jabs that did it. I had told her. I told her husband the day after he got his first jab, just don't do it. Just don't do it, please. Don't do it. He lost his sense of smell. He got ill soon after. Sue was gone within 6 months. So she had cancer riddled through her body. It has acted extremely. It went extremely fast acting, and her whole family, apart from 1 or 2 members, said it's definitely the jabs that have done this. You know,
very sorry, John.
Yeah. Oh no, it's. I'm sorry for not only. I mean, I don't get to see. All I have to do. I grew up with that shop around, like, all my life. So Sue has always been the kindest person. I even feel like she's there right now, that she was such a staple part of the community. But I was talking to someone just about 4 days ago about Sue, and she was telling me about the vast amount of people she was actually helping, because I'm still discovering, there's a lady who heard my tribute who lived nearby and said, Sue changed her life. Sue, she was depressed, she was anxious, she couldn't communicate well with people, she had loads of different issues. And Sue said, hey, you grow plants and flowers. Why don't you sell some of them in my shop? And then you can, and she gave this woman purpose, so much purpose, that she got so much confidence in doing it that she's still doing that, and now she's making a little business out of it. Sue helped every single person who would go. She would go to the schools and she would teach the kids how to make money. She'd be like, look, you've bought these. I'm going to do a little impression of her.
Okay.
I'll be forgiven. You've bought these sweets. They're 5p each. How much do you sell them for? And all of the kids would shout 10p. She would teach the basics to people. She would help the girls. She would bring food not only to different people around the area. She would leave food outside their house. She would take food to the brothel. The girls who work in the brothel, the local brothel, who are, run down, they are ignored by most of the area. They're seen as, the nefarious hookers who are hanging around. Sue went there regularly and gave them food, gave them help, let them off things as well, tried to help them out as much as possible. She was central to this community, and they killed her. They killed her. There's many people who know that was direct consequence. And it is such a sad state of affairs to realize that it's not just those people who took the jab and have passed aren't just like this idea of they were silly, they were silly people, they didn't think properly in their lives, they probably acted like that throughout all of their life. A lot of these people were extremely caring people who were extremely caring about the community, and that was tapped in. Those people were especially targeted by the way that this COVID rollout was. And it was, if you love your community, you will take this and put this in your arm and accept it. And, one of the biggest losses to our community by me is Sue. And Sue was one of the most beautiful women who could have possibly ever lived. Now the family who had owned a shop for basically all my life, had to sell up the shop. Her husband was devastated, kind of checked out in many regards. And it's such a devastating, but it's the people who were taken from us. A lot of them are the people who cared the most, who were the most important to our communities and the most important. And that should not ever be forgotten. It's such a bizarre situation we've all gone through.
They've all tried to do, beyond the right thing in their minds. And, they've ended up sacrificing their lives, And the more we learn about it, it's all coming out now. For example, that the jabs that were given to the public were never tested. So we were all, the public who took the jabs were all a part of a terrible, evil, Nazi-like experiment, really. And I think when we made the film with Jackie Devoy, you've had Jackie on the show, and Naeem again, we got together to make Playing God. We were trying to expand this idea of experimentation, that this is something that seems to be rife in the NHS and has been throughout its existence. So we took a case going back to 1978, where a young girl at the time was 13, was experimented on with the Epilin drug, which was fairly new at the time. And the drug company admitted that the death was caused by the drug, Epilin, but this information was withheld from the inquest. And I think what's so brutal in many of these cases where, the state protocols have led to these deaths of the loved ones of the families is that it's always, it's a sort of, all the big institutions seem to close ranks together. So child protection, you've got the police, you've got the coroners, they all join forces together to conceal the truth and then to try to make their families look like they're completely mad. And then this goes on years up for years, where we had another case where a baby in the film playing God, her name was Elizabeth Dixon. This is a very well-known case where the baby was brutally harmed the moment the baby was born, caused great, terrible damage, brain damage. And this was all hidden. This was all hidden for so long. And then this baby was transferred to Great Ormond Street. They didn't have the information, so they didn't know what they were doing. And they just progressively ended up making things worse and worse and worse. It was almost as if they were, trying to kill the baby. That's what it seemed like. They ended up causing a problem that she couldn't breathe, so they had to give her a tracheostomy, a breathing tube. And they're saying that might have been the cause of the death. Parents are arguing that there were multiple other things, for example, giving an overdose of oromorph drug. And so many catastrophic things happened to that baby that it can't just all be mistake after mistake. And then the cover-up that followed, 20 years of a cover-up. And then when a final report was commissioned by the state at the highest level, at government level, by the then health secretary, even that parents argued was, gave them more anguish because it didn't bring out the truth. In fact, they said this was another cover-up, effectively. And so their trauma continues. Just when they're thinking they're going to get some justice, they get more pack of lies, and they can't recover. And this was in 2001. You see, so it's so sad, and you have to speak to these people on a regular basis, and they're still going through those motions, trying to find justice because there's no closure for them.
Yeah.
And that's just two people. There's so many more, isn't it, that I haven't been able to speak with. If I could interview everyone that has contacted me, for example, around the cocktail of midazolam and morphine drugs that were given under this NG 163 protocol at the time, for anyone who was having breathless issues or were agitated or anything like that, they were given this cocktail of drugs that was known to cause respiratory suppression. And we're talking about huge numbers, and not just from COVID. This protocol was taking place after the Liverpool Care Pathway, which was supposed to be the end of it. Lots of other people approached me who were given, their families were given this cocktail of drugs that killed them, and they were not meant to be an end of life, isn't it? And it's quite known now that this 40-odd thousand people who died in this alleged COVID wave in April 2020, that these were all given, all these people were given end of life. So they manufactured, the whole first wave of COVID on the back of these deaths.
That, my friend, is genocide.
Yes.
That there is no other word for it. There is no other word for it. That is so devastating. I mean, the thing is that when I think about it, I think why aren't people screaming from the rooftops? And everybody is suffering from some level of trauma from those
all
events.
of us. Yeah. It's just that's the thing, isn't it? That it's coming out. It's not as if these things are hidden. You can find all of this even through the mainstream press at times. But nothing's actually being done. And now they've even got, instead of people learning from this, what they're doing is they're bringing things in like the assisted dying, and that's another very shocking thing that's happened. And I just interviewed, I also run this National Social Archive on BitChute, where I interview people to gather their testimonials about some of their experiences in the different fields that they worked in throughout the COVID narrative period. One was a barrister, one of the very rare barristers, called Paul Diamond. And he only just recently completed a case, successfully, I must say, where he worked with a young man, 33 years old, and the mother, Adam. Adam, the young man, age 33, has got severe learning difficulties, but he didn't want to take the jab because he doesn't like needles. Now, Charles Walker, the MP, he also didn't like needles, so he said that's why he didn't take the jab. No one forced him to get the jab, but this boy, because of his learning difficulty, they sedated his drink 5 times, and on 2 occasions successfully managed to give him the COVID jab. So finally, the case went to court because they wanted to give a booster recently, and they managed to get the court a case going. And Paul Diamond helped to defend this young boy and a mother, and so the young boy was not given the booster. But again, not for the reasons that these jabs are dangerous. The courts give the impression that the reason they didn't need to give it is that boy not having the COVID jab now, he's not going to harm anyone else because everyone else is protected by these great jabs. So the reasons that he wasn't jabbed are something totally different. You see, this is the insanity. There's no recognition on their part. I don't know how these people can sort of sleep at night, And you ask yourself, do they have children of their own? And many of them do. And it's just unbelievable what wavelength they're on. They're on at a completely different frequency. And I don't know, some of these people, I think they probably truly believe that they put it in their head somehow that what they're doing is for this greater good. I don't know. From my perspective, and probably from yours and many others who think like us, this is pure evil. They're completely deluded. But look at the harms they cause. And this has happened throughout history. We've seen this happen in Nazi Germany, isn't it? Where people just complied. They said we didn't know what was going on, or we thought this was, it's always like that same old story, isn't it? The same old record. And we never learn. And it's so shameful when these politicians celebrate these days of the national memorials, the Holocaust Memorial Day, and Auschwitz, and you think, wow, these people have no shame. They use these platforms to promote the terrible harms that were caused, and then they go and do it themselves. And they
to gain power, so they can repeat the exact thing they're supposed to be acknowledging.
And none of us can. Most of the people, the public, can't see it. They can't see any Nazism. They can't see any fascism. They're completely, sadly, it's brainwashing, isn't it? It's that heterosuggestion that happens from birth, that our parents do it. I mean, our parents go along with things, because they're scared. It all comes from fear. They're afraid, if I don't give my child the jabs, everyone else is, and I'm putting great risk if I don't. Or if I don't send them to school, well, I can't give them all the education, or I can't see any other way, so I've got to do what everyone else does and send them to school for the indoctrination course and the child abuse that begins at school. It's the abuse starts, the indoctrination starts the day we're born. We're presented with all the colors. We get these toys that we haven't asked for, but we're given these toys that are colorful, Cinderella dolls, and pink for girls and blue for boys. And then the indoctrination begins of all sort of, this is the way of life, this is the truth, this is why this is like this, and this is why this is like that. Your government cares for you. They're going to, if you lose a job, will give you benefits. It's all an inversion, really, isn't it? And it's a very elaborate inversion with a very fine line. It's very difficult for people to cross, but it's all brainwashing, and we've all had it, haven't we? We've all had it.
Yeah, well, I think we've all experienced it, but like you say, it's the acknowledging it. I mean, for me, when COVID was raging, when the COVID narrative, should I say, was raging, I was talking with people. I was having like what they would consider full-blown arguments. What I would consider, I was debating with them, and they were shouting at me.
Yes, yes, that's right. And I saw some of the videos earlier on. I remember.
There's a few months went by where those people who were arguing with me just stopped coming near me, and I think that wasn't, during that time. What I noticed afterwards was a lot of them realized that there was a lot more to this, and that they should have probably started questioning things at the time.
Yes.
And so they didn't want to have that conversation with me. And I can understand. I don't push. But there are a few of the wonderful ladies. I live by a park. I have a dog. Loads of old ladies walking their dogs, I know, in the park. They know me very well. And I found myself the other day telling off two of them. They were going for their COVID jabs. I'm like, there's no, you've really got to stop this now.
Yeah.
And where during the pandemic they were infused and given energy to fight against what I was saying, they both started to put their heads down, and you could see they knew I was telling them the
Yes.
truth.
Yeah, that's
But
great.
they were still stuck. They're still
Yeah,
stuck.
there's
They're
people still
told.
going for it. Yeah, there's people
They're
still, a lot
told.
of people are going for it. It hasn't stopped. There are people still,
Yeah.
but then, yeah, like you say, the positive is that I know some very hardened, COVIDian people who still say it's the right thing to do, but they say, I'm not having any more. I was like, oh, that came out of nowhere. Very hardened, still believes that everything that was done at the time was right. But now I think, oh, it's not needed now, so I'm not
Yeah.
going for it.
Yeah.
So it's, a lot of people have got a lot of pride and they don't want to admit, what they've put themselves through. They know that this is not, because a lot of them have been getting COVID again. Some of them have been very ill. So they know that these things haven't worked.
It's
Um,
really nice to talk to you, Ash. I'm really
really,
glad that we've reconnected again, because it's
yeah,
been a.
thank you. All the credit goes to you. It was such a nice surprise. I haven't done an interview for a very long time,
Oh, you
and
were
being called
high
up
up,
by you is very
high
special.
up on my list. High up on my
Thank
list.
you.
Like I say, you made me. I started telling people for a while afterwards that if they didn't interact with people, if they didn't communicate with people, they were flicking up zeros, and their life would never change, and the life of those around them would never change while they continued to flick up zeros. And if they want to change their way, they need to show positivity. They need to
Yeah,
produce that positivity, and they need to start flicking up ones and twos, and they
yeah,
need to start being kind and
yes,
caring to the fellow humans, and start accepting people in and giving hugs where necessary. And that really, I really do mean you helped me seal that idea that you have to be, if you are truly nice to people, if you truly give across kind, caring advice to people in an honest way, you give it with loads of love instead of darkness, fear, and hate. What you get is a much better response, but also you're doing the right thing then.
absolutely. It's beautifully put, and I'm really grateful to you for your kind words. It means so much. If you can just have an effect on anybody in life, it's very pleasing. You can't deny that. So that's been excellent. Always a pleasure to talk to you. Actually, so it's our second or third one, isn't it?
Third, maybe
This is the
fourth,
longest
but
one.
let's think. Yeah, indeed. This
This
is
is much more
my
nicer because we could just relax a bit and not be under time constraint, which is
yeah.
always good. I've been really honoured to be on the show, and it's been fantastic to talk to you again. We have to meet soon, though, somewhere, somehow.
I think so. I think
Yeah,
so. We'll arrange that very soon. I'm pretty positive. I love meeting people
yeah.
in person, and I've been
Thank you.
blessed to have been welcomed into people's homes and being given food here and there as well. So maybe I can get you to
You're
cook
always welcome.
something
I'm here
nice.
for. We'll keep in touch, and I'll let you know soon when everything gets sorted here. Where I'm going to end up, who knows? But wherever I go, you'll always be welcome. And I will try and swing by in South Wales because I'd like to come
Well,
up.
if you do, tell me,
Yeah,
because I
I was
will
planning on
welcome
it.
you as well.
I'd like to go to the Cinema and Co because big shout out to Anna Redfern, who helped to screen our film Gods of Their Own Religion there. So she's been very helpful to do the whole screening there. We had a very good turnout in Wales. Great time. We had a fantastic time amongst the Welsh team there who came to support us. And when they sent us off, we had a little tear in our eye because they were waving us away, and we had such a great night
You're pretty
and such a
friendly in
responsive
Wales.
audience. So when I come up that way, I'm going to swing by your way as well.
You'll be welcomed with open arms, and we'll have a bit of a hug, and
Definitely.
we can go from there. Well, for the time being, can you tell people where the best place to find your work, or
Yeah.
where the place? Because you mentioned your BitChute stuff. Just give people a good idea
Yeah.
of where to go.
So you can find me my work, the current work that I'm doing, or quite recent interviews. They're on the BitChute only because the YouTube channel got taken down about 4 years ago. So I never put it back up. I just didn't feel that that was the right place to put my stuff up because if they're taking down and censoring the work of these important voices, then I thought, no, I can't be part of that because they're conspiring to cause harm. They're hiding the truth. So yeah, it's all on BitChute and it's called Planet Uplift. You can also probably best place to find these on Twitter. So I'm Ash TFE, which is my name on the handle on Twitter. And Playing God, you can watch that still on UK Column. If you just put Playing God, it's on UK Column, who've kindly left it on their website. I think it's also on the Children's Health Defence website as well, Playing God. And Gods of Their Own Religion hasn't been released as yet. We're just still doing a few more screenings. But as soon as it does, you can take a look at the website of Naeem Mahmood. That's www.godsoftheirownreligion.com. You can find that there. So
I will put all of those links as well in description. So if anybody wants to go and check those out, do so. Ash Mahmood, I love you. Thank you for
coming. Love you
on.
too, man. Thanks very much for having me. It's been beautiful, beautiful. You're a beautiful soul. Take care.
What we know is that we will end up with many more unemployed